Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary, direct from our newsroom, otherwise known as my Compost Heap. Let's see what stories we're working on this week. Well, I learned a new phrase in my reporting this week, and I couldn't find it anywhere in my Webster's Dictionary. The phrase is shutdown bonus, a phrase for our times, and I discovered it in the bowels of a bankruptcy filing by the Journal-Register Company, a national greedy chain that destroyed newspapers across the country and owns the New Haven Register. They filed for Chapter 11, and within the process of asking for protection from creditors, the executives of that company have asked for $1.7 million in bonuses, with names like shutdown bonuses. Here's what they want the bonuses for. It's spelled out in black and white. For laying off more employees. They've been laying off workers all over the country for years now as they destroy their papers. And for closing down more newspapers in order to salvage a tiny bit of value for the creditors who have between $500 million and $1 billion of debt. That's sick. Speaking of sick, I'm looking in here for the news hole of the Hartford Courant, another company owned by a greedy chain that has filed for Chapter 11, the Tribune Company. They own the New Haven and the Hartford Advocate too. They're actually a criminal company. The guy who bought it, Sam Zell, did a fraud, claiming it was an employee-owned company. In fact, employees have no say. They don't even sit on the board, but it was a ruse not to have to pay taxes. Anyway, that's an old story. The new story is this week, they laid off another 100 employees, including 30 reporters and editors. That brings to 135 the number of reporters and editors. Just over a year ago, it was 270. A lot less news to cover, but I'll tell you what. We feel very badly for the people who lost their jobs, because we always feel badly for people who lose jobs, especially in tough times. Separate from that, it's not sad what's happening to these papers, because what we are seeing is not the end of news. It's not the death of news. It's the death of a deviant model of news gathering that is a perversion of the robust media we had at the dawn of our democracy. What that model is monopoly, corporate-owned daily newspapers. Okay? The idea is you have generic news put out by companies that starve staffs gradually to increase profits every year and don't give back to their communities and don't have multiplicity of voices. So what's happening now is it's not just the recession that's making these papers fall apart. It has accelerated it. But these papers have lost readers for decades because they've given people less and less to read and less reason to read. So we're reading all these obituaries of the news industry, but that's written by people who are sitting at these newspaper newsrooms. That's like sitting in a funeral parlor all day and believing that everyone's dying while new lives are being born all around you. There's plenty of good stories every day still, even in the Courant and the Register. I like reading both papers and others. There's less than there used to be. But there's tons more news out there. And that old model saw readers as consumers. The point of news is to sell toasters or cars. That's not how media started in this country. It was a robust media with many voices. So instead of one big monopoly paper with a huge newsroom like the Courant's to come back, or the Register's formerly large one, we have lots of media. You read good stories in their papers, what's left, and they'll survive. Or you read them on independent news outlets on the internet, and you also get information and discussion on blogs, and you'll get information from foundations that do studies, and more people are participating, and that's better. It's like at the dawn of democracy when you had a Thomas Paine who did some form of journalism, but so did a Horace Greeley, and there wasn't one way that's supposed to be better than others. The arrogance of the corporate media filtered down even into the newsroom, where people believe that's the only way you do news. In fact, the world's changing, and news is getting better. Now, if you do want to have more reporters, professional reporters at the state capitol, there is a non-profit news organization in Connecticut, the New Haven Independent, run by the Online Journalism Project. And if anybody feels like donating money to have more Capitol reporters, we got your back. Until next time, this is the New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary, and remember, always pick up your trash.